I wanted to take this opportunity to give you an overview of your podcast paneling assignment. This assignment comes on the heels of the assignment that you just completed, which was where you selected your podcast topic. I can tell that many of you put a lot of time, energy, and effort into thinking about that topic, and as is sometimes the case, some of you just threw it together at the very last second, which is okay. You can still roll with it. Regardless, you're married to that topic, and I want you to start jumping into the part where you start creating and producing that podcast. That's what this assignment is designed to do, give you a space to do that effectively. Plan ahead so that you don't get stressed out when it's time to submit that podcast at the end of the semester. So the podcast paneling assignment breaks apart your podcast episode into several segments. This podcast can range in time. However, it should not be less than 12 minutes, and it should not be more than 30. That's a pretty big ballpark figure, so I'm asking that you stick to it. No less than 12, no more than 30. I want you to break apart this podcast and what you're thinking as you've started to piece together where you might go here into several different panels. Before you start breaking apart the panels, I want you to give us information on exactly what your podcast is. So reiterate that topic, kind of like you did last week. So let's assume I'm putting together a podcast here. My overarching topic is men's violence against women. Now I'm going to be making some of this off the top of my head, so bear with me. Each of these should have several sentences. This front one, this top one, maybe a little less. The reason I chose this topic is I am passionate about it. I have had extensive experience, blah, blah, blah. I'm serving as a domestic violence advocate, or I've seen it firsthand, or this could be anything. But just give me a little bit of perspective as to why you chose this topic. Okay, again, you'll have a lot more detail than what I have here. I'm just trying to fill you in to give you some details. My general level of knowledge on this topic is pretty high. Please ignore my email in the top right corner. I have served as a DV advocate and have gone through a series of trainings and blah, 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 blah. Give me, again, enough details here. And overall learning goals for the podcast episode. Learning goals are those things that you want your audience to get out of listening to your podcast. So I have 3 of them here. I want to, 1, raise awareness among men about violence against women. 2, highlight the voices of women who have experienced violence. And 3, show men this is an issue that they should care about. That's actually kind of like number 1. So let's just scratch that. I'm going to have 2. I would like you to have about 3 learning goals for your overall episode. Okay? Now, each of these panels is a part of the podcast. The podcast should be broken into 3 different segments, a lot like This American Life or many of the podcasts that we listen to. Each segment should have a separate story or interview or performance or something. They are 3 distinct entities that make up the overall topic and facilitate these learning goals. So, panel 1, I give my general subtopic. Here it would be how violence really impacts women. Now, is this a personal story or is this an interview? Well, let's assume this is not a personal story. For segment 1, which you can kind of jump these around, that's totally fine. I'm going to do a personal, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do a personal story. I'm going to do an interview with female, a woman who grew up seeing domestic violence firsthand. Okay? Details or angle of the story covered. If you're giving a story, summarize the story that you're going to share briefly. If it's an interview, provide interview questions to be asked. So I would ask this person, tell me your story. And let's assume her story was she grew up with an abusive father that she witnessed beat her mother several times. Okay? What was it like being a child and seeing domestic violence? How did seeing this impact how you see yourself as a woman? Okay? On and on and on. I want to note that this assignment is private, so if you're doing interviews in the final podcast, I would highly encourage you to change the interviewee's name just to protect their anonymity or privacy. But for here, you can provide their real details to me. This is a private assignment. And then you're going to give learning outcomes for the audience. What learning outcomes for this panel? don't know why that's doing that. So let's just do one. Highlight voices of women who have experienced violence. Show that violence impacts more than just the victim. On and on and on. These learning outcomes are not a copy and paste of these ones, but they should directly support this above. Then you're going to do this for each panel. So panel 2, what it's like to be a man in a world full of men's violence against women. This is a personal story, okay? Mine. And then I will be summarizing my experiences as a man who has undergone extensive training and done extensive research with perpetrators of violence against women. I hope to share, and again, I'm going to give a little bit more detail here, okay? My learning outcomes highlight the importance of men caring and tending to this issue. Highlight the voices of men who have been perpetrators of violence, on and on and on and on. Again, not a direct copy and paste of these up here, but they definitely support my overall podcast goals. And I'm not going to fill in panel 3. I'm just going to let that be. But you see how this is supposed to work. You need 3 distinct panels. In addition, you'll have an introduction, a conclusion, and transitions, and we'll work on that on a future assignment. For now, focus on really fleshing out what you want to do in this podcast episode. And I implore you to provide extensive detail on this assignment. It is worth points, and it's very obvious to me the students who really do put a lot of effort into it and the ones that don't. So put a lot of effort, take a lot of time, hash this out. The more work you do now, you're saving yourself stress in the future. So begin this panel assignment. You're starting to marry yourself to these ideas. Yes, you can change directions a little bit, but I want to see that the work you put in here leads to an outcome that shows that this work wasn't in vain, right? So enjoy the process. I'm excited to get just a little bit of a better glimpse as to where you plan to go in your podcast. Good luck.